Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Legacy Liftoff podcast by Dronadair. I'm Cody Retlick, your host, and with me today is Jason San Souci. Yeah, thanks Jason for joining me today. I'm excited to first episode that I've had you on, but I think you interviewed me at Commercial UAV for a little bit of yours. We did a little bit there. We met a little bit before that, but I'm excited to catch up with what you all got going on and sharing your story today. So thanks for
That sounds awesome, man.
joining. Yeah.
Thanks for having me on, man. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You've been in the industry for a while now. You're a champion in a lot of different ways for, a lot of different things. And, I know your story is really is cool in a lot of different ways. And again, for anybody that's listened to the podcast, that's what I love doing, is showing off cool people doing cool stuff in the industry. So, I always like to start at the beginning of your story. I won't go back to birth, but we can go back to, the birth of you in the drone industry. I know you were part of the Air Force, correct? So is that kind of the start of your drone story, or like, give us like first initial, like, how did you get into it? Where did those first sparks come from? Like, how did it all begin?
Yeah, man. So I'm going to have to go back a little bit further. So my story related to the drone industry is full of mystery, intrigue, and irony. So a little teaser there.
Love it.
I know. You're like, already intrigued. Let's go. So obviously, for the last 22 years, I have been a remote sensing and GIS scientist. What's funny about that is I have taken exactly one course in remote sensing and imagery interpretation in my entire career. Everything else has been entirely experiential. What I got my degrees in are not GIS, remote sensing, drones, aerospace. It was actually astronautical engineering or rocket science. Which is fun but boring, not for me. I was just intrigued by what you could do with remote sensing. Like, I was just fascinated by it. It hooked me in, and I was like, I'm all in. This is amazing. And I've had a really awesome career using different modalities of remote sensing. Now, not just drones, but satellites, ground vehicles, crewed aircraft, military, non-military. So probably about a third of my career now has been defense and intelligence related remote sensing. The other 2/3 has been commercial imagery exploitation and analysis. Where do drones come in? Well, I had an opportunity to deploy to Afghanistan for 3 years, and it was not with the Air Force. I was actually an Army contractor working with SAIC in Lidos, and we were on an Army program, which later became a program of record, which was wildly successful. And we got to procure aircraft from all over the world, and then we got to integrate, strip them, install, integrate all of our equipment, all of our sensors, go test it, deploy with it, operate with it, and then obviously eventually decommission or move them on. And we did that with like 12 different aircraft. So it was super, super duper cool. It was a fun little experience. During those deployments, my longest one was a year. Like, I stayed out of country for a year. Not a whole lot of dangers per se, being on a forward operating base in Afghanistan and being on a crewed aircraft, which, the Taliban they didn't have an air force. So not a whole lot of threats there, but there were occasionally some ground threats that we hear about. Here's where the irony comes in. So we were flying along one day, and we were several hours into a mission. We're flying over the Hindu Kush Mountains. It was a near border operation. And we had younger pilots. And those younger pilots, they kind of mess with us sometimes. We did some fun stuff together. Like, they'd float us, and we do some fun stuff.
You gotta keep it interesting.
Gotta keep it real. But then our TCAS went off, and we're like, well, that can't be good. We thought they were messing with us. We hoped they were messing with us, and they were not messing with us. So TCAS, for all of you listeners that are not aviation folks necessarily, it's your traffic collision alert system. Yeah, that's bad. That means something's going to hit you, and you got to do something. So I was the mission commander on this mission, so I was facing the rear of the aircraft. I looked over the right wing, and maybe 30 meters off the right wing was a Reaper UAV climbing through our airspace blind. Yeah, it was close. Like, I could read the serial number on the Hellfire. Like, yeah, it was pretty close.
Jeez.
Yeah, I know. It's like, what the
That'll
heck?
get the hairs on your arm.
That'll give you a change of flight suit right away.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, man. So we returned to base, obviously, right away. We were almost done anyway, thank goodness. And we learned that those aircraft, when they lose their SATCOM, they do two things, especially over the mountains. So I guess there's a little bit of geointelligence built in. They orbit and they elevate. Well, we were operating in what's known as an ISR stack. Intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. For those folks, I know I use a lot of acronyms. Just blame the military.
That's all right. Yeah, put them all out there. Aviation and
Man,
there's so many
right?
acronyms.
There's so many acronyms in every industry, so I don't feel bad. But I will explain them. So there's a bunch of assets above these missile-bearing fighter drones, which, by the way, are not little. Like, if you've ever seen these things, they're huge. Like, think bigger than your house, huge. So yeah, it was a little scary, coming up against it, and it was not cool. So anyway, the same week, here's where the irony comes in. The same week, I had an interview scheduled with a close friend of mine now, Patrick Lohman of Precision Hawk. They were just getting started. And they were essentially looking for someone to lead their data analytics portion of their company, like build that team. So the irony, obviously, is that I went from almost getting killed by a drone to now being in the drone industry.
It's a very sudden change, right? It's like that's probably one of the more unique stories in that way of how you got into it, and more real life story than most people, right? A lot of people I talk to is like, hey, I saw someone take a picture that was amazing. I saw an opportunity in an industry that ultimately was very ripe for it, or knew that there was going to be a lot of applications. Whereas, military were the first to adopt drones, right? Obviously before they became consumer readily available type of tools. And I think that, hearing that transition from that to that is one of the more real life applications. Oh my God, we need to do something about this, right? So I guess, how did they, did you need to convince yourself that this was something that you needed to do and take on, or it was like, in that way,
so for me, it was still always about the data. The thing that I was very, very fascinated with the whole time was the fact that these flying devices, from what I could gather prepping for the interview, was that you can exchange sensors. And I was like, whoa, that is so cool. You can go from RGB, multispectral, LiDAR, hyperspectral on one platform? Yeah, sign me up. Like, that sounds amazing. What was funny is, because it was still the beginning of the industry and that they were still building their initial aircraft in Toronto, and it took me several months to even see a drone working for a drone company. So I was a little bit like, we do make these, right? Like, this is a real thing, like for real. So, but I was always focused on the data. Like, I was like, so this was back in 2014.
2014, okay.
Back in 2014. Yep. So that's when I transitioned there. So, and that was if I'm being honest, that was a fun ride. Like, it was a fun ride going from a small, like 12 person something to like hundreds of people and hundreds of millions of dollars in VC funding later. Like, that was a fun ride. Definitely some cool parties, definitely some great world travel. Like, it was pretty dope. And some great people. Like, there were some great people that I still love today that are now part of the industry, and they've dispersed. They're in other industries as well. So great ties that bind. And I was only there about 5 years ish. Okay. So that was a fun ride. So, man. And then as sort of my journey continued, obviously at that point, had a lot of really cool real world experience, flying lots of different sort of platforms and analyzing the data and running those teams. So, I came back to Colorado, which is, this is kind of where this is home, man. Like, Colorado's home for me, and got to work with some cool companies that were using drone tech and that wanted to figure out how to immerse it into different technologies, primarily surveying and mapping. So I got to, slightly different experience, got to work a little bit more on the surveying side, got to see different types of drones, lots of single rotor, larger lift, heavy lift drones carrying LiDAR platforms. So that was kind of cool. And then this was really funny, because then I went to ILMF or Geo Week 5 years ago, and here in Denver, that we just got done with Geo Week here, and met with some folks from Juniper Unmanned, and I was with them for 5 years, and that was a fun journey too, doing lots of really cool stuff, primarily related to sort of specialty sensors like slung load magnetometers and really high-end LiDAR sensors, and some bathymetric LiDAR, and there was some really cool projects that they were working on. And at the end, it just, great people, also amazing people. And sort of along that, I kind of generated a little bit more of a overall respect for the industry, but also I saw that there was an opportunity. That opportunity was, not a lot of people knew about the drone industry. Like, when you tell people that you're in the drone industry, they're like, I'm sorry, you do what? Like,
right.
that's a
You
job,
take
that's
pictures.
a toy.
Yeah, you take
What?
pictures, you take videos.
Cool.
What?
So you're
What?
spying on me? Like, I mean, right? I mean, like,
right.
So
Yeah.
I was like, man, there's an opportunity there to educate and really inform and increase the access to the industry overall, period. And I was like, I don't know, maybe I can help with that a little. Like, people have always sort of told me, they're like, man, you got a real good voice for radio. I'm like, that's cool, but like a face for Hollywood, right? Okay.
Right?
No, maybe not. Okay, that's fine.
I had a buddy that was in radio too. I always told him, like, you have a face for radio, my friend. Like, it's like perfect.
My dog knows me. So I was like, man, I should use that gift, God-given gift, to be like, hey, you know what? Let's see if I can help with that. So 5 years ago now, holy crap, I started the Do You Know Drones podcast. And it actually started originally as an Amazon flash briefing.
Really?
Just 30 seconds to a minute. Yeah, I know. That's how it started 5 years ago. And it was pretty successful. Like, and honestly, I just got bored with it. Like, I grew it to about 50,000 enablers. So, like, I was like, wow, that was pretty cool. That went quick. But I saw an opening. I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool. But it got a little boring, if I'm being honest. I probably should have stuck with it. I did not. I was like, at that point, I was like, I guess a little bit of my kids and a little bit just my own personal fascination with like YouTube and video content creation. I was like, I think I want to try that. I transitioned maybe 3 years ago to my YouTube platform, and I still syndicate, the audio portion places, but I saw that as a cool opportunity to kind of do what you're doing, just having cool conversations with cool people, doing cool things and hearing cool stories about the industry that I think the world should hear, not just inside the industry, but outside. So that's been interesting. Along that journey as well, COVID hit and everyone's like, man, I don't know. Like, there was kind of like a couple different types of people, right? Those that got like really sort of bummed and didn't really do anything and kind of like, watched the internet, low. Like all of it.
Just binge
laid low, watch the internet, crush Netflix. Yes. Or the folks that like went nuts and like went, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to have a TED Talk. I'm going to do this. I'm going to start a new company. I'm going to okay, I was kind of in the middle-ish where I still crushed some Netflix, but I also started a nonprofit. That was sort of along that journey because my wife had, her son is autistic and has some other special needs, but he's amazing. And I honestly didn't know about neurodiversity or autism really before I met them. Like, obviously I've heard about it, but I didn't know anything. But before that, it was just like, I'd say I didn't know anything. Like, they were just special needs kids. And I was like, okay, cool. So as I started to learn more and as I started to dive deeper into what was happening in the drone industry, I saw potential opportunity. And that opportunity was, and we saw that opportunity, it wasn't just me, of this particular underrepresented population has a hard time getting jobs, even with college degrees. Like 80 to 85% of them are under or unemployed because they just don't fit in. They interview terribly. They're a little weird, like whatever it is, right? And there's a lot. There's some obstacles there, that are not necessarily overseen. So I started to learn about that. But then at the same time, I was like, man, kind of like if you break down neurodiversity, it really kind of just means people that think differently. Like, and I'm like, wow, okay. So I remember being at a conference, an AUVSI conference actually, and I remember that one of the speakers was saying, like, we have a public, sort of acceptance problem. We have a perception problem. We need people that think differently to help sort of grow this industry. And then it was like, aha, a little light bulb. And it's like, wow, this is literally a population that thinks differently. And if I'm being real honest, and everybody knows this, look, the barrier to entry into the drone industry isn't exactly hard. Like,
Right.
what, 60 questions and go buy
Yeah.
yourself a
Too
Best Buy
easy.
drone and
Yeah.
you're now a drone pro. Okay, maybe not really. Maybe not quite that extreme, but
Right.
the barrier to
Or
entry
at
is
least
pretty
you
low.
can start to be, or try to be,
Right? Yeah,
or
it's a
act
starting
like
point,
you
right?
can
It's
be,
a
right?
starting point.
Yeah.
It's a starting
Yeah.
point. We're like, look, we could provide that same opportunity to this population because the barrier to entry is so low. And the thing that's really interesting about this population is they typically have these areas of concentration, these areas of interest that if you hop onto that and you tie into it and you tap into it, they're going to go 3,000 miles an hour to learn everything they possibly can, be the best they possibly can, but that needs to be moderated and accommodated and really wrapped around that particular individual to sort of support them. So that's where Neurodiversity Works came from. We're like, cool, here's a population that needs help. Here's an industry that needs help. Win-win, right? So that's sort of
Love
where we
that.
started. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of, that's where we started.
Yeah, and that's fantastic though. I mean, that's you're taking some, some group of people, right? That is more so, you know, needs it from a different perspective, and I think that's fantastic. I have family members with special needs as well, and I think it's an underrepresented, group of people that you're helping in so many cool ways in a lot of different areas, and bringing together then that an industry that at the time, right, was semi new in some ways as well. So and that's a lot of transition points that we had there, right? From being taken looking out an aircraft to seeing a recon drone to starting a podcast, starting a non-for-profit. You are really in a lot of different ways doing a lot of different things, and you have had an awesome story in some really cool areas. So, and I commend you in a lot of ways to just seeing the opportunities in front of you, and being that you're taking action in certain ways, because I think oftentimes when I find that when I'm either talking to pilots or people in the industry or just even other industries, that it's like, hey, how did you start this, or how did you go about doing this? It's like, well, recognizing one, that there is a need or a problem, and how can you solve it, right? And how can you better help in certain ways? So I think you've done that in a lot of different ways, which is super cool. And I know you've kind of recently, I saw some sort of announcements that you were doing some updates or life change, right? You're kind of maybe transitioning and stuff into certain areas, maybe, or doing something different. I know you were with Juniper, right? You still with Blue Nose, I believe.
Absolutely.
You want to tell me a little bit about that as well, or how that
Oh
came
man.
about?
Also, fun story. I love stories. Stories are so much fun. So
That's what we're here for. We're here for the
right.
stories, right?
So my wife Nicole, at the time, she was running a small hyper local magazine, and it was in the neighborhood that Tanner, who founded Blue Nose Aerial Imaging, was living in. I did not know this guy at all. So I remember it was sort of like, she was like, do you know this guy? I'm all like, who's this dude encroaching in my space? Like,
He's
what's
so
up?
close to me, and I don't know him.
Yeah. So it was really funny. So I arranged a meeting. We met at a beer hall. Shocker.
Perfect.
And
It wasn't a bourbon? You weren't drinking whiskey or bourbon?
I was not this time. I know more on that later. No, it was not. We met at Chaluna, actually, which is in Stanley Market Place here. Great beer. Anyway, so we met there. We hit it off right away. He's amazing. He's kind of like one of those people, what, you meet him and you're like, we're going to be best friends. Like,
Yeah.
it was funny. So it was a really, really cool connection. And when we did that, it was like, wow, how can I help you? Like, I love what you're trying to do. And Blue Nose, if you don't know about it, so it's probably the first drone franchise. So Tanner Harris started Blue Nose, COVID, about the same time we started the nonprofit, started COVID. It was a bunch of furloughed. He was basically trying to find a solution. And obviously he was researching the industry before this, but this was sort of the impetus. And COVID happened. A lot of airline pilots. He's an airline pilot. He's now a United Airlines instructor and has an awesome family. But like beyond that, he's like, I want to be helpful. I want to like give opportunity in this new industry for sort of furloughed airline pilots, which getting their Part 107, if you're an airline pilot, I'm going to say yeah, that's going to be pretty easy. So
Super easy.
kind of a low barrier, right? Super low, super easy at that point. If you have that level of knowledge, this is like less than tying your shoe. It's like
Don't even
pulling
have to
on a
study.
Sketcher.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
The slip-in version.
The slip-in shoes. Yeah, right. Can't mess that up. But what was really cool is that he built it around not just the opportunity in the industry, but he's like, look, this is an opportunity for us to sort of set some standards potentially. And what I mean by that is this industry, as you know, it's not quite Wild West, but it's not too far off, right? So the number of pilots coming in, the number of, 2 million, 3 million plus drones in the US, hundreds of thousands of Part 107 operators. I would say there's a very, very small percentage of them that have some base foundational knowledge, mentorship, standardized equipment, training, those sort of things. Everyone else, it is hundreds of thousands of flavors of ice cream. That's kind of how I view it, right? So there's an opportunity there of if we can build something that we all build together. So it's a franchise. So it's all about standardization. That's what he was trying to build. And I'm like, man, that's rad. So yes, I sit on their advisory board as their quote unquote drone doctor. And it's just been fun, like meeting those folks, growing that franchise with Tanner and the rest of the committee and the rest of the franchisees. It's just cool. Like every year we do a training workshop, and that workshop, like this year, it's going to be super fun. Like we do it. We're actually doing it at Chaluna, interestingly enough, where Tanner and I met.
Full circle.
Right? Full circle. And like, we're going to put the franchisees into groups, and we're going to like, look, here's a challenge. Here's their challenge. Here's a table full of equipment. Here's the software that we use for our franchise. Come up with a solution. Do it. And then we will judge you, rate you, give you critique points. There'll be awards and prizes and obviously free beer, maybe some bourbon. But like, we want those different ways of thinking, because I believe so, because like I said, being a remote sensing and GIS guy at my core, I know that there's about, 11 different ways to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So we want to see those different things. And then we want to weigh the pros and the cons and see the benefits. And I think that creative thinking, because that's what's really cool about this industry, is it is an outlet for those that think creatively, but also have technical savvy, and they want to geek out with equipment and software and stuff like that. It's both. And I love that. And I think that's a huge advantage of what we have in this industry, because not only does that give folks an opportunity to showcase what they know, learn from something they may not know, interact with folks that they probably don't always interact with, but it helps elevate the industry overall, because I've always said, I think we've sort of uncovered maybe 1%, maybe 2%, 1.5%, we'll call it 1.5% of what this industry is capable of today. Right. In 20, it's going to be well beyond both of our careers to where we start to see it really establish itself as massive. And when I'm talking about today, like what they're talking about, what by 2025 it's still going to be like a $70 billion industry. That is crazy to think that that's only a few percentage points of what's possible in this industry. So that is mind blowing that we get the opportunity, we get the honor, and I'm humbled by it all the time, that like, look, we get to sort of set the foundation, the groundwork that the rest of this industry is going to be built upon. That is a huge responsibility and a little scary. So, man, so the thing that I really like about this industry as well is that you've got all different types of people, but overall, it's a pretty small industry, and you kind of get, it is relatively small. And it's just fun to sort of work with those people that have similar mindsets, that want to build in the same sort of way. And for me, that's what Blue Nose and Juniper and Precision Hawk and all those folks have been, is there are like-minded folks out there that want to do things hopefully the right way, whatever that is, and sort of build a foundation that can last. Because I don't think anyone listening to this, drones aren't going anywhere. They're here to stay.
Definitely not.
So it is incumbent upon us. It is our responsibility. It should be our mission to make sure that what we're building this on is solid. Like, we're building this house. We're not starting at the roof. We are starting at the foundation. And then we got to make sure that thing is solid and it's going to stay there. So that is on us, man.
Yeah. And I love that, because I think, oftentimes too, I talk to a decent amount of people in the industry, but a lot of pilots as well, right? And it's like, most pilots are not business people. They're not people that are going to get inside of their entire business and put processes together and think about what type of, scalable software solutions do I need for this, or do I need to get into a different type of, service offering? Because I talked about this on one of the previous podcasts that we just recorded. Was, it's a tool, right? At the end of the day, you're not, a lot of people are not building a business just flying drones, right? You have to still put together a full business plan of, what type of processes am I going to automate? How am I going to, use these maps to help people and sell into it, right? But also, are you going to be good at it in a way where you can see yourself doing it every day and tap into different markets and different industries by, being that expert in your area, right? But a lot of it is process and getting down to that too, and knowing how can we better uh, set that foundation, be able to grow it and scale it. And because, there are a lot of different pilots in working for industries, right? Working for companies in the industries that are still also doing it maybe as a side hustle, or they're doing it on the side or they just have no business acumen that they want to really decide to do that. So I think, what Blue Nose and yourself and whatnot have done in that way is a great idea to set that foundation and give people the tools and knowledge. I think since COVID too, right? We've kind of all been more used to this interaction, right? Rather than in person, where I think that creativity really truly lives when you're around like-minded people asking questions and just being genuinely curious, right? And just like knowing what you don't know, I think is one of the biggest things. And admitting that, right? Is like, hey, I don't know anything about the acronyms you just threw out. It's like, what are those acronyms, Jason? And just ultimately knowing what you don't know. And I've said it before, collaboration over competition is always my mindset, because this industry is small, right? In a lot of different ways. So you kind of know faces, or people, or you hear of certain solutions, and there's a lot of people doing so many cool things behind some curtains that maybe aren't showing it off as much as maybe they should be. So yeah, I think it's a great business model. It's a great idea. I'm glad you guys had beers that day and went for it and started to get into how you can kind of shape, the industry in some ways. So it's super cool. So I know what is kind of on the horizon for you as you move forward, as you kind of go, yeah, give me just like a high level overview of like what's on the docket for this year, and like as you go forward, what are some thoughts on, your ideas or idealisms going forward on how we can best continue to go, but also you, like what are you working on these days?
Man, I appreciate that. So one of the things that we're focusing on this year quite a bit is for the nonprofit specifically, but it has far further reaching ties within the industry, is we have a registered apprenticeship program that we've set up through the U.S. Department of Labor and the Colorado State Apprenticeship Agency. It's a 2,000 hour paid apprenticeship program. Like we truly view the drone industry as a skilled trade. So think of it like plumber, railroad apprentice, electrician. So we built up a very similar program or a work process that essentially our apprentice will go through some pre-apprenticeship training. They'll get the Part 107. They'll have some mentorship. They'll do some job shadowing. They'll take some online courses. And then by the time that they're ready, they'll maybe go through a summer. We do our summer camp. We're going to do that again this year.
Nice.
And by the time they're ready to be picked up by an employer, one of our employer partners, and we're working with some pretty big partners. Part of my goal this year is to grow that so that our apprentices have more opportunities within more industries that are supported by the drone industry, so that they sort of find their home. And obviously there's massive sort of DEI impacts there, but it's also, look, we want our students and our apprentices to be successful. So we're focused on that this year and growing that here in the state of Colorado. But I would say on the very near future, we are absolutely looking to take this, make it completely digital this year, and put it everywhere. Like that is a big, massive, hairy, audacious goal that we have because we know this need is everywhere.
Yeah.
And we know that there are partners everywhere that want to support us. And we know that there are students out there that need us. So like that's a big goal. Outside of that, I mean, I'm still looking for my next home. Like, I think I kind of got it figured out. I'm not gonna tip my hat to that yet, but look forward to an announcement hopefully here soon. But before that, man, I'm just staying busy, doing some consulting, doing some advisory work with the nonprofit, having great conversations with people like you, and just trying to stay. I don't know, do things that I think are fun. Like, I think that's what's so important.
Yeah, and that's what you got to do, right? I mean, you don't feel like it's work then, right? You're ultimately, for a better cause for yourself, but also, my dad went to he's been at the same job for 30 some plus years. He's had two of them in my lifetime, It's not something that, I would love to do, right? It's like going to that same thing over and over, right? And keeping it fresh, something that you love to do, but you're making an impact, right? In a lot of different ways. And one of the questions too I have on the neurodiversity works is like, you kind of answered a little bit, right? Globally, or you want to branch out to more of throughout the United States. So like today, how do you go about like finding people that want to be inside of that apprenticeship? I know it's mostly Colorado based right now, correct? Is there like some sort of like process that ultimately, like, say if someone was interested in that drone industry and being a part of it, like how does that work from being a part of your non-for-profit?
Sure. So I mean, quite simply, you can go to our website, Neurodiversity Works. Students can sign up. You can sign up that you're interested in the apprenticeship program. And then what happens after that is what we're sort of building now is they'll go through a digital workshop. They'll go through, which we were doing in person, and we still occasionally will do them, but we realized the two of us and all the other responsibilities we have, we can't scale that.
Yeah.
So digital workshop. We've even created, and this is kind of cool, we created a digital 3D immersive job shadowing program. And what I mean by that, we literally 360 filmed with an Insta360 great camera, like really good one. We literally filmed an entire job, soup to nuts, interacting with the customer, planning it, doing the site visit, traveling, doing the operation, doing the analytics, all of it. We filmed all of it. And then we had some great voiceover. There's some little things you can click on to learn more. And we've incorporated as much as we possibly can in one, like basically 4-minute video. That's completely 3D immersive. You put on a virtual headset, like a MetaQuest 3, and like you're in it. You look around and you're here. You're where we are. So we developed that with a company called Be More Colorful out of North Dakota, and they're awesome and they're a great partner. Then we want to take our LMS and soup it up. Like, we'll likely have our own Part 107 course, because one of the things that we noticed is that we had we do have some great partners. Like, we were working with UAV Coach, Pilot Institute, some great folks. Their programs are outstanding, absolutely fantastic. The thing that we were lacking is sort of that transparency to work directly with our students, because they don't learn necessarily the same way. They don't interact the same way as a lot of students that they're used to. So we needed more of that insight, and we weren't going to get it by just handing them off. Yeah. So we're developing a custom hardware training for our students. And then on top of that will be sort of a foundations. Before that will be a foundations of commercial drone operations course that covers a lot of stuff, but also everything from the history to like the importance of a mentor, workplace safety, OSHA, first aid, like all the sort of stackable first certifications. We're trying to put everything into one stop shop for our students. That's consistent, so they don't have to change systems constantly. It's consistent. It's with the same sort of people, same cast of characters, same interfaces. And we build upon that with like capstone courses and just other things that we're plugging in over time that will continue to add value. Because I truly want our graduates to be in like the top 5% of the drone industry worldwide. That's my personal goal.
That would be fantastic. I think that's a very awesome goal to have. I mean, it's a cool thing to ultimately hyper target, that set of group and ultimately know that you're helping in a lot of different ways, but you're building the industry as well, and you're helping them, and you're helping so many different types of people, no matter what, because like you mentioned before, the industry is wide, but it's narrow in the same breath. So being able to showcase that to different people is fantastic, and helping that out. So I look forward to continuously watching how that grows, and helping in ways that I can, because it's a cool, and it's a really cool thing that you're doing. So I
Appreciate that, man.
I think it's fantastic. From where you're at, where you've been you've been in the industry for a while now. I like to always know kind of thoughts, horizons, like just industry wide. Obviously we have a lot going on right now, from flying cars and deliveries, and different regulations. Remote IDs finally, like, it's been around, but we're getting, now that you have to be it's actually becoming mandatory now, right? We don't, probably not going to get another delay. So it ultimately, where do you see kind of the industry? Give me a year and 5 years, right? Of
Sure.
like overarching scope.
I think that in a year, BVLOS will be much more prevalent. Drone in a box will be more prevalent. AAM, UTM will start to have more outward mobility. So I think that's what's coming in like a year. Man, 5 years? Oh, man, who knows? Like, I see everything in infrastructure, critical infrastructure inspection, agriculture, delivery, disaster management, like those sort of drones for first responders, those specific industry verticals are to the moon, baby. Like they're not going anywhere. They're going to be around for as long. They're just going to keep getting better and better and better. But that's only a few. Like those are the opportunities are in the next 5 years or the next few years.
Yeah.
5 years, 10 years, who knows? Like there's going to be some use cases that we can't even imagine. And that is exciting.
Yeah.
So, but where does that leave us? That leaves us where we still have to develop an ecosystem, standards, training, mindset. We need to continue to be collaborative. We need to continue to bring in and tie what I would call, what people call a digital thread through all of these different technologies that allow us to then use them as one resource. Like that's huge. Like, and the value of that has not quite been seen yet, but I think that's where the industry is absolutely going. I'm convinced of it. And I think once that actually happens, even on a small scale, the ideas that abound from that are going to be crazy. So it's really interesting because I've had a couple conversations with folks that are in adjacent industries that are highly interested in what's happening in the drone industry, and they're waiting.
Yeah.
They're waiting, and they're big, and they're waiting. They're waiting because, I mean, not just because regulations, that's a piece of it, but there's a lot of other things, right? There's risk. There's lack of standards. There's all of these things. There's these challenges and opportunities that we have still to address, that once those things are addressed, even to a level where we could start to get out of that early majority, man, that tipping point is going to be massive.
Yeah.
Like these are big organizations that are going to come in a huge way once we get to a certain point, or once they see that we get to a certain point, but they're keeping a pulse on the industry. So know that everything we're doing right now, they're watching. So we have to make sure we have a responsibility, like I said, again, to do things right, because they're gonna come in big soon. And for me, soon could be a year, soon could be 5 years. Some of these things, they're aircraft carriers. They take a long time to turn. So it's just a matter of just trying to stay consistent, stay true to what we're doing, build collaborative partnerships where possible, cooperate when cooperate every chance you can, and everyone just gets better. Like I think that's our opportunity. Everyone can just get better in this industry, and the industry is better for it.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with a lot that you said there. I've been a part of organizations that have, spent millions of dollars on drone programs just to kind of scrap it in a way because they wanted to wait, right? Or they maybe rushed into it too early and didn't really know how much impacts like starting a drone program had. But if you surround yourself with the right people in certain areas of what you're doing. I mean, I say it all the time. I learn a new way to use drones even today, almost every week, I feel like, or for surely every couple of weeks. It's like, oh, that's awesome. Like, that's super cool. And even we've done some jobs where it's like, I would have never have guessed that. But if you put your creative, minds to it, there's a lot of awesome, unique applications, and not even just with the drones, but the software around it, and the applications that we can build on to add to drones and programs and stuff. So yeah, I agree with you. The technology is always ahead of the regulations, no doubt, and constantly going to be playing catch up in some ways, because people want to develop that technology so much faster so that they're ready for these regulations. But I think as long as we continuously educate and make sure that we're doing things the right way, that the industry is just going to continuously grow and build something fantastic. So,
Amen, sir.
yeah. I appreciate you being on today, Jason. Unless, you have anything else to share, I always want to have people, hear where they can reach out to you. I know you're very active on LinkedIn, but, how can people help you, for one, as well as then, how can they reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. The best place would probably be LinkedIn. If you're not on LinkedIn, get on it. Like, there's a lot of information that's shared there. There's a lot of program successes, case studies. There's amazing things out there. It's probably the best way to get in touch with me. I try to share as many insights as I possibly can there. That's one of the best places to find me. I think that's probably the easiest, right? Since I wear a lot of different types of hats, one consolidated platform to find me. Connect. Let's have a chat.
Yeah, and listen to the podcast too. Are you still pumping out regular episodes, or do you have a
Occasionally, yeah.
cadence
I
for
did
it,
like
or?
some Geo Week episodes, and now I'm just planning my next one, which I think is going to be pretty cool. It's going to be a follow-up. I'm planning 2 follow-ups. One, which was really successful, was sort of the top drone capture apps from 2020,
Okay.
still killing it. I'm like, wow, it's 2024. I should probably do an update. So,
Yeah, there you
some
go.
of those apps aren't available anymore. So, yeah, let me do that. So I think I'm going to do that one. The next one, and I'm excited about it, I'm focusing on it this year a little bit more, is I think the technology is getting to a point where that nexus, that digital thread, that the nexus of technologies that are coming together are making it easy for operators that have the base foundational knowledge of what's actually happening, making it as close to one step as possible. So working with Drone Deploy, working with Trimble to try to put together what they're already putting together. I'm just trying to sit on top of it and showcase how easy it actually is, how a single GCP can get you everything you want in the drone industry. Like,
Cool.
easy peasy.
Cool.
Like,
Yeah.
so I'm working on that. It's an update because I did a one GCP workflow that had lots of steps. We covered RTK, we covered PPK, we went to different software packages. I'm going to see if I can keep it to one step in one software package.
Make it easy for people, right?
Man.
That's the biggest thing, is like, make it easy, show the best ways to do it. But I think that would be a great, I would
Man, coming soon.
definitely tune in. Yeah. Well, cool. We'll put all the links to all your endeavors and everything that you're doing in the show notes as well. But Jason, appreciate it. It was great catching up and connecting. Are you going to be at any shows coming up this year, or do you have anything planned that people could maybe meet you in person by chance?
Yeah, I'm planning on in September going to Commercial UV Expo. I'm not sure about the others, so we'll see.
Okay. Well, then just stay tuned. You never know, right? Where you'll run into
Never
them.
know. That's
Awesome.
right.
Thanks, Jason. I appreciate you hopping on. And again, if you enjoyed the episode, we appreciate all comments, likes, shares, anything to help us promote it. Again, we're here with Jason San Souci. Sushi. I did it again, right? Sushi.
Oh.
I did it again, man. No, just kidding. I was thinking the French version in my head, and that's what I was like, ooh. Anyway, appreciate it, Jason. Thanks for being on, and can't wait to catch up again soon.
My pleasure, brother. Have a good one.
You too.